Our last lecture for Chapter 6 deals with domestic violence and kidnapping and false imprisonment. Domestic violence is obviously a serious issue. It's also an underreported crime, just like many of the other crimes that we've studied in this chapter. Domestic violence can be chronic in that it's ongoing, it lasts for a long time, it's not just a one-time incident, or it can be acute, where it's really just a one-time incident. How we handle those depends on whether we are talking about chronic or acute domestic violence. If it's a one-time incident, we can probably handle it through an ordinary arrest or really straightforward kinds of means. But if it's a chronic type of domestic violence, so this is abuse that's been going on for years perhaps, then the solution to that particular crime is going to be much more difficult. Why is it going to be difficult? Because what we see with chronic abuse victims is that they often suffer from two common characteristics. One, low self-esteem, and two, isolation. So they feel like they're worthless, that they can't do anything right, and they feel like they're all alone. That's part of the abuse. The abuser may have so isolated them and made them feel like they're worthless for so long that they can't conceive of themselves in any other way. So one of the things that happens in chronic abuse is that the abuser isolates the victim from all of the victim's friends and family, or at least most of them. The abuser is constantly checking on the victim to see, are you at work? Are you with someone? Are you, where are you now? Why aren't you home? Those kinds of things. They may not allow the victim to drive. The abuser may control the access to vehicles, may drive them to work, may pick them up from work. They control every aspect almost of their lives. They control the bank book, so they give the victim an allowance. So in essence, they're treating the victim as if they're a child. And so after enduring this for long enough, the victim starts believing it and starts believing that they're worthless. Again, the isolation is the abuser may say, I don't like your family. I don't want to be around them. Let's not go over and see your family. I don't like that friend. I don't like this friend. That particular friend who's maybe a friend of the opposite sex. You must be having an affair with that person. That's why you want to see them. Any kind of tactic that can make that victim totally under control of the abuser is something that the abuser is going to employ. So the victim is feeling that they're worthless, that they're all alone. So if the police show up to an incident and the victim says, no, I don't want the abuser arrested, and the response by the police is the traditional response, which is, then why call us? Quit calling us if you're not going to leave him. We're not coming back again. If that's the response that the police take, you have just made it 1,000 times more likely that another incident is going to occur, because you've just assured that that victim is going to feel even more worthless and is more alone. They now believe that the police aren't even on their side. So the police need to understand that the victim is feeling these feelings, and that the abuser's main purpose is to control the victim. In order to take a more effective approach to domestic violence, or a more effective response to domestic violence, if the police are called, they have to understand that it's probably going to take multiple calls to the police or other agencies before the victim will actually leave. She, and I'll use she because most often in domestic violence the victim is a woman, but she's going to have to take those steps several times before she will actually leave, if she ever leaves. It's hard for someone who's not being abused to maybe perhaps understand this, but again, this is chronic abuse that's been going on for a long time, and she thinks that she can't do anything on her own. So the thought of leaving this relationship, especially when maybe children are involved, when she has no access to money, perhaps no access to a car, no friends anymore, at least she doesn't think she has friends, no other support, to tell her to leave right now is like telling her to go to the moon. it's not going to happen. Instead, police need to realize this. They need to recognize the signs of chronic abuse, and they need to start gradually moving the victim through what I call baby steps towards liberation and safety. Their primary concern should be, let's make sure the victim is safe right now. There is no immediate harm going to occur to her right now, but let's start planning the idea of leaving and start to empower her right now. But let's not tell her, move out tomorrow, because that's unlikely to happen. But let's maybe give her a card to a victim's resource center, where perhaps she can call and talk to them, even if it's just a phone call. And that will bring her closer to leaving and getting out of this abuse, to make sure that she knows that the police support her. They will be there for her. All of these kinds of things are important. I've provided in the materials a checklist of an action plan for domestic violence victims. This was given to me by a person who's now an FBI agent, and it was given to him by police departments. And so if you look at those steps are, again, appear to be baby steps. The first stage is just merely making copies of the victim's license, asking her to do those things. And if you look at the checklist, it has her write down what she's going to do. In the case of danger, I will call, and then she fills in the blank. I will place my copies of my passport, my driver's license, other important documents here in a safe place, and she'll indicate where she's going to place it. I will teach my kids to dial 911. These may seem like little things, but they're the basic building blocks for empowering this woman to realize she can do a lot. And it could be a man as well. I keep saying woman, but it could be a man who's a victim. But in the most common instances, it's a woman who's being abused. So we need to encourage this person to understand that they're not all alone, that they aren't worthless, that they are probably keeping the family together despite all this violence and all this other abuse, mental abuse in addition to physical, and that they can do something to get themselves out of it. They don't have to endure this abuse forever. But again, it's probably going to be a process, and it's going to take multiple attempts to leave before that person will actually leave the situation. So we shouldn't be judgmental. We shouldn't be criticizing the woman for not leaving, or the man. Again, if it's a man who's being abused, we shouldn't criticize them, because this is a process that has been built up over years. It's not something that happened on the first date. It's something that has happened over the course of time. That person who is abusing them may have been wonderful at the beginning. They were doting on them. They were bringing them flowers, always calling them, and then gradually it became more controlling and more abusive. So again, it's not something that on the first date the abuser punched the victim on the first date, because likely there wouldn't be a second date. But this is something where it's progressed over the course of time, and it's a difficult situation to end. And we often find that this is when, especially for women, when they decide to leave, that this is often the most dangerous time for a woman, because it's at this point that the offender may say, I have nothing left to lose. And so if we review murders of women, and this is true in Center County, a significant number of women are murdered when they make the decision to leave a domestic violent situation, or their abuser thinks that they're going to leave. So this is a really critical time, and it is a dangerous time. So again, police departments need to pay more attention to these situations. Don't treat domestic violence as a nuisance call that, oh, I hate answering these calls. Why don't we just ask the parties to separate for the night? Can't you go to a hotel? Can't you go to a friend's house? Don't bother me for the rest of the night. And that's the end of the story. That's how the police used to respond to domestic violence, and unfortunately may still in some instances respond in that way. Don't do it. Instead, try to empower this victim, try to lead them with these baby steps towards safety and freedom. Turning to our last types of crimes under the crimes against person, we have kidnapping and false imprisonment. Kidnapping is different from false imprisonment in that it requires asportation. Now that's kind of a strange word that you probably don't use very often, but asportation means taking something away from one place to another. So kidnapping, in order for it to be kidnapping, you have to detain a person and actually transport them from one place to another. If you just hold the person against their will, then this is false imprisonment. So it's kidnapping without asportation. So an easy way to remember asportation, pardon the language, but you're transporting your ass somewhere, and so it's asportation. And again, I apologize for that, but it's an easy way to remember it. So asportation is a taking away. We're going to see this one in the next chapter when we cover theft, because theft requires asportation, a carrying away. But for kidnapping, we're holding somebody against their will, without their consent, and we transport them someplace. False imprisonment, we would lure the person into our house, for instance, and keep them locked up in our basement. That would not be kidnapping because there was no asportation. That would be some form of false imprisonment.